Hello and welcome inside 101 Sports. I'm Javik Blake, and thanks so much for joining us for our very first episode of the semester. 2020 has been a crazy year, and it's been a crazy semester here on campus at Elon University. But here at 101 Sports, we're still dedicated to bring you insightful and informative debate and discussion throughout the next couple of weeks. Now, we're doing things a little bit differently this year. We're not in the studio. We are instead in classrooms scattered across the communication school and across campus. But you'll still get your insiders, you'll still get your stories, and you'll still get some great sports talk here over the next 30 minutes. So we're going to start things off in just a little bit. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the MLB Playoffs with Carroll and Colby Cook. The NBA offseason preview with Jack Knuettel and Grayas. They'll be going head-to-head in what's sure to be a lot of fun, talking all things NBA offseason. Then we'll talk to the NFL coaches and LeVeon Bell signing with the Chiefs. Just a little moment ago, we'll talk about that with Cole and Matt Laguzza. All that and more coming up right here on 101 Sports. Stick with us. Welcome back here to 101 Sports. I'm Javik Blake, and observing the social distancing guidelines here at Elon University, we are joined by a panel of insiders from around campus. From down the hall is Carroll, and across campus is Colby Cook in the Danley Apartments. We'll talk into baseball here to start off the show. First off, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So we'll start off with the LCS and what has been hotly contested. The Rays and Astros has been a great series, even though the Rays won the first three games and are currently on the brink of advancing to their first World Series since 2008. And the Braves and the Dodgers series was billed as a big pitching matchup, and it hasn't been that so far. Will, we'll start with you. What has been your biggest takeaway so far of the first 5+ days of the LCS?
I think it's got to be the Dodgers' offense is nothing to mess with. I mean, we saw it in the regular season. They averaged almost 2 home runs a game, but they came to play in the NLCS. Just got to hope their pitching can step up.
Colby, what do you got?
I'm going to say conversely, I think the Dodgers did explode in Game 3, and, we kind of saw that coming. But in Games 1 and 2, I'd say the Braves kind of kept them at bay a little bit. They, were not putting up the runs, and Max Fried and Ian Anderson were absolutely spectacular.
And we talk about Max Fried and Ian Anderson. Both of them have been so good this year for the Braves. But the biggest question marks are who is going to start games in the 3, 4, and 5 spot in the rotation. Colby, is there anyone in the Braves pen that we could see step up to take on one of those roles? Because as we saw in Game 3, it could end really poorly for the Braves if they got to trot out anyone else other than Fried and Anderson the rest of the way.
So, watching the Braves as much as I do, I've got a pretty extensive knowledge of their roster, but I can tell you from experience right now, the Braves simply do not have the depth. I thought they were going to start Huascar Ynoa possibly in Game 5, but he threw 93 pitches in the blowout the Dodgers, so he is likely off the table. Bryce Wilson is on the bump for Game 4, and I don't know. I mean, I think the Braves can get it done. They have one of the deepest bullpens in all of baseball. The question is the young arm that starts the game for the Braves, can they go the distance?
Well, what about you?
I mean, I think you got to trust Kyle Wright. I mean, we saw it against the Cubs. He threw 6 innings, only allowed 3 hits, I believe, and he pitched well, but you got to have faith in him. I mean, he started during the regular season. You got to trust him.
We're here talking all things MLB playoffs with Carroll and Colby Cook here on 101 Sports. And guys, another thing, we're going back to the ALCS here for a moment. The Rays pitching this year has been nothing short of unbelievable. The team has an ERA below 2.5, but that team batting average below 200. The pitching really keeping them afloat throughout the playoffs. Is there a recipe for besting the Rays pitching? And we'll start with you. Is there a recipe?
I think you got to chip away, play small ball, just score 1 or 2 runs here and there, and just hope that, they mess up, maybe get an error. They haven't had any so far in the ALCS, but you hope they walk 1 or 2 guys and then hope one of your big hitters like Correa can drive them home, or you hope that Gurriel can heat up.
And we'll stick with you here for a moment. With the Rays in general, is there a path to the World Series in a World Series title with this pitching staff, despite the fact they've lacked offense really all postseason long?
I think so. I think it depends how well the Dodgers offense plays, if assuming the Dodgers make the World Series. The Braves have Freddie Freeman and Marcell Ozuna, Travis d'Arnaud as well. They just have both NL teams have strong offenses. But I think if you can hold them in bay like they did or they are currently doing with the Astros, I think it's possible. But I still think whoever comes out of the NL brings home the pennant.
And Colby, talking about the NL, it's really a wide open field on who could win that series. But with the Rays, you're matching up either against the Braves, who have a great offense, and the Dodgers, who have the deepest team in baseball in 2020. Is there a recipe for either of those teams to break down the Rays pitching on a consistent enough basis to win 4 out of 7 games?
So here's what I'm going to say about that, Javik. I think the Braves' offense is lethal, and personally, I think they can contend with just about any pitching staff in baseball. My only caveat here is for the Dodgers to potentially go against the Rays. The Dodgers, no question, I think, have a little bit more thump in the lineup than the Braves do, but they're back into the bullpen. Kenley Jansen, Blake Trine, and those guys, they have not had a question in the back of their bullpen for years, and this year they do, and that's where the Braves best them in that category. So I think, if the Dodgers advance, they're going to have trouble because the Rays, as Kevin Cash says, they've got a stable of guys that can throw 100, and a lot of them are from very unique arm angles. So you got to think about that. And the Braves, for the Braves' perspective, I think they can tangle with them in the bullpen spectrum. But again, the Braves' real caveat here in the Braves' real hole is their starting pitching.
When you talk about the Rays bullpen, it seems like they're trotting out guys every single night of people that you've barely heard of, who they found in Jackson, Mississippi, playing for the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, of just random assortments of teams throughout minor league baseball that these guys are in. But looking ahead, the World Series will wrap up in about 10 days from now. Who do you have winning it all? And first, we'll start with you, Will.
I think, assuming if the Dodgers come out of the NL, I think it's got to be the Dodgers. Like you said, they're the deepest team in the league. And their bullpen, their starters, other than the back end of their bullpen, is nothing to mess with. And then they got Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, and, of course, Cody Bellinger. So if they can have a consistent offense, I think they can bring it home.
I don't think you can get much better than that lineup in all of baseball, and something we haven't seen really the last couple of years, a lineup as dominant as the Dodgers have. Colby, who do you got winning all?
So I've got the Braves and the Rays in the World Series, and as much as I want the Braves to win this, I think that the Rays are going to present a tough task. I think the series, if it was Braves and Rays, would go at least 6 games. So it's really tough for me to say, but I'm going to go with my hometown Atlanta Braves on this one. There might be a little bit of fan involved, but I think, again, no, we do not have the starting pitching depth, but they do have the off days instituted in this World Series that we've not seen all postseason long. So I think you can ride Fried, Anderson, and Wright.
And that sets them up real nicely for Fried and Anderson to pitch multiple games throughout the World Series. Guys, thank you so much. It would be an interesting World Series. Either way, we're going to get it. Guys, thanks so much. When we come back here on 101 Sports, we'll look ahead to the NBA offseason preview. That's all coming up next here on 101 Sports. So in the NBA this season, the Los Angeles Lakers, far and away the best team in the NBA, and they showed that in the NBA Finals, taking down the Miami Heat in 6 games to win their 17th NBA title. And that moves us to the offseason, a little bit later than it usually would be in a normal year, but 2020 has been proven to be anything but normal. Free agency starts up October 18th, and here to break down everything you need to know about it is Jack Knuettel and Gray Eyes joining us from around the School of Communications. Guys, first off, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
So the pool of free agents this year isn't as big or as talented as we've seen in years past, but there are still some positions that really stick out as far as where the talent is concentrated. Jack, let's start with you. What's the top position talent-wise of free agents this year?
I got to say it's probably like that wing forward position. You got like guys like Gordon Hayward on a player option, Brandon Ingram from the Pelicans. He could resign or he could leave. There are a lot of other options. DeMar DeRozan, there's like a wing guard kind of guy. A lot of guys. I wouldn't say there's like any big star max caliber players, but there are a lot of guys who could earn around maybe $20 million. Jeremy Grant, another name you can throw in there. Danilo Gallinari. I would say probably the wings. I would say is probably the best position-wise. It's probably the deepest too. I'd say Christian Wood is also another name we can throw around in there too.
Great. You're looking in a different direction though. You're looking a little bit in a different area. The wings are good, but you're saying it's the guards?
No, I'm really saying it's the bigs. I mean, you got to start up front, first of all, with the number one free agent who already announced that he's going to re-sign with Los Angeles Lakers, and that's Anthony Davis. He's going to get his Supermax deal. And then you're going to look at players like a Montrezl Harrell, who is coming off a six-man of the year performance. He's going to go and get paid somewhere else if the Clippers don't re-sign him. And what you really see throughout the big guys is you're seeing players that can go and contribute for a championship. You're looking at your Andre Drummonds, who's going to give you 18 and 16 like he did last year for the Cavaliers. A Serge Ibaka, who's a former champion. Marc Gasol, former champion. Tristan Thompson, former champion. All guys who can get you good points and a good amount of rebounds. And then you have Hassan Whiteside as well out in Portland right now, who's going to be a free agent after leading the NBA in blocks per game. And then you have other guys who have really extended the floor and become those three-point shooters like a Paul Millsap or an Aaron Baines. Those guys are free agents right now. So this class is deep. And if you're a championship team, that's how you're going to bolster it, is going down low.
I don't know. I got to say, I think the wings are better. They're just younger. I think the game nowadays is changing more towards a three-point and ball movement era. I don't really see the big guys as being as important nowadays. I just think the wings, guys who can shoot and who are athletic and they can switch, is much more important in the NBA today than like an Andre Drummond who can only guard a big man.
But go ahead.
I think guys like Gallinari or Gordon Hayward, guys who can switch super easily, they're also great shooters. They can create their own shot. I just think there's more value there than the big man who's known for either playing defense and getting rebounds and isn't quite have the role as the wings do nowadays.
See, my thing, though, is I'm talking about bolstering championship teams because we saw with Miami in the NBA Finals. So it was the one thing they couldn't do. They couldn't guard Anthony Davis. Bam Adebayo got absolutely beasted inside when he was on the floor and when he wasn't hurt. So what I'm saying is if you're an NBA championship team, you're going to need an interior defender. So, like, if you go meet Giannis at the rim, if you go meet Anthony Davis at the rim, if you're defending Joel Embiid, if you have that kind of talent down low, you need somebody who's going to go in there and who's going to bang with them. And so that's why I'm saying this is the most important, because this is a guy that you can get to defend and who can get rebounds and who can score occasionally if you need him to.
And great, talking about teams that really need an upgrade this season and who could be that upgrade, Gordon Hayward's a free agent from the Boston Celtics, and he could be a lot of help to a lot of teams. Who do you see winning the Gordon Hayward sweepstakes this winter?
The Gordon Hayward sweepstake, it's going to remain up in the Northeast. It's going to be the Boston Celtics. He's on a $34 million player option to be the fourth option in their offense behind a Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, or a Kemba Walker. So you're looking at a fourth option making $34 million. There's no way Gordon Hayward's going to pass that up, so he's going to go back to Boston.
Jack, I saw your face there. You had a little bit of a smirk. Is he not going back to Boston?
I could definitely see why people would think that. He just had a new baby. He needs the money. I understand. Money nowadays drives things. But there's a great opportunity down in the south of Georgia. Atlanta Hawks. They got the cap. They got the young guys. Trae Young, John Collins, Clint Capella, throw in Gordon Hayward. I think it's a nice group of guys that can maybe sneak in a playoff run. You never know. And then we have DeAndre Hunter off the bench. You can kind of have Gordon Hayward teach him how to be a small forward in today's NBA. DeAndre Hunter last year struggles a lot defending on switches, and I think Gordon Hayward would be a welcome addition in Atlanta.
But that's the thing, though, with Gordon Hayward, though, is that he's been in the league since 2010. He's going into his 10th or 11th year. Is he really going to want to go to a rebuilding team who might scratch the playoffs, or is he going to go to a team that's contending for the Eastern Conference Championship like the Celtics are?
Well, why would you want to sit and be a fourth option when you can be on second or third option and you can rejuvenate the old Gordon Hayward of old that we used to saw in Utah? We all missed that Gordon Hayward when he was driving and dashing and back when he was in Utah, and his step player is still there. I think maybe with Atlanta and Trae Young, it can open him up a little bit. I think it's a good option for him.
And Trae Young and Gordon Hayward together has got to be a fun and exciting duo. And in the Eastern Conference, any team can seemingly sneak into that 8 spot in what has really become a wide open conference this last couple of years. And another big free agent is Chris Paul. Jack, we'll start with you. Where do you see him ending up?
He's not actually a free agent. He's currently rostered on the Thunder. He's got 2 more years, but the Thunder it's very well aware the Thunder want to sell him out. They want to get him out of there. My first pick for him would be New York. We know the Knicks are a disaster. They're a dumpster fire. They've been for 20 years. Chris Paul is that steady rock that the Knicks need. Chris Paul is one of the smartest players in the NBA today, and he will help that team from top to bottom, from the bench players to the guys at the top, James Dolan. Chris Paul will be that guy to help everyone. The problem is they don't have a ton of places where you can trade for Chris Paul, their talent isn't as good as, say, like a LA or a Milwaukee. But if the Thunder want to save money, the Knicks have a lot of expiring contracts. And I really think that if the Thunder want to rebuild and start over, the Knicks are their option.
And the Knicks are a team that has a lot of draft capital as well. And the Thunder is one thing they have stocked up on in the last couple of years is draft capital. They could trade him for a couple of pieces. Gray, do you see him being moved, and where do you see him being moved to?
I definitely see him being moved because that was the first thing that people talked about when he joined the Thunder was that where is he going to end up? But then they went out and got the 5th seed in the West and made the playoffs and took Houston to 7 games. But I do not see him going to New York at all. I don't want to see anybody going to that dumpster fire of an organization when they're past their prime.
Yeah, Jack, how dare you put that on Chris Paul? Come on.
He's a 35-year-old man.
Hey, someone's got to do it, Why not Chris Paul?
For Chris Paul.
Sorry. But why Chris Paul, though? Because, again, like, who's going to learn from him? Frank Ntilikina? I'm sorry, but Frank is not there, and neither are the Knicks. They're probably the worst team in the NBA, so why would Chris – I know he's a big market guy, but why would he want to go spend his time in New York? The place that Chris Paul is going to end up is with the Los Angeles Lakers. We saw it today with Rajon Rondo opting out. He's going to L.A. He's going to reunite with the Banana Boat crew with LeBron James. They need a point guard. Rajon Rondo just opted out, and Chris Paul – the one knock on Chris Paul throughout his career was that he did not win a championship. He hasn't even gone to the conference finals yet. So that's not enticing to Chris Paul to go to Los Angeles and try and win the championship with LeBron James and be his starting point guard?
No way. If I'm the Thunder, why would I want, like, Kyle Kuzma or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope when I can have cap space for 2 years down the line when I can have LeBron, potentially a shot at Giannis Antetokounmpo? Like, why wouldn't the Thunder want cap space for this upcoming draft, the upcoming free agent class next year?
If they unload Chris Paul, if they unload Chris Paul anyway, they're gonna get cap space. He's on like $30 million a year. So if you throw in draft picks, they have their 2020 pick, they have their 2022 pick, but a bunch of their picks are tied in with the New Orleans Pelicans. But if you go with Chris Paul, you're gonna unload a ton of cap space anyway. So if you take on a Kyle Kuzma, you take on an Avery Bradley, you take on, I don't know, maybe some other player like a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope or something like that. Those are good role players to surround Dennis Schroeder. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have those type of players who are young and wings, and they need veterans. They got one with Chris Paul, and now you can get them in spades, as well as a young wing with Kyle Kuzma, who can potentially replace Gallinari if they don't re-sign him in free agency.
All right, guys, we're going to have to take this to Twitter. We're running out of time here. Make sure to tweet at us at @OneOnOne Sports and let us know who you think Chris Paul is going to, because we got a lot of good debate on either side of the spectrum. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Cole Noble and Matt Laguzza are going to break down everything with NFL coaches, and there is a lot to talk about and some big news that just came out. We'll be back right after this. So to wrap things up tonight, we head to the NFL, and huge news today on the backs of what's been a wild first 5 weeks in the NFL. LeVeon Bell signing with the Chiefs after getting released by the Jets just a couple of days ago. And joining me to talk all things NFL head coaching and all things LeVeon Bell, which is a wild, wild news drop, is Cole Noble and Matt Laguzza. First off, reactions to LeVeon signing with the Chiefs.
Just honestly, for me, not surprised. LeVeon, I felt like was going to sign with a contender. Already this year, the Jets were scheduled to pay the last, for this year, they were scheduled to pay the $6 million they owed him for this year. So he already had his money. So what you were looking at was a run with a contender, just a one-year deal, whether it was going to be Buffalo or whether it was going to be Kansas City. So it was Kansas City. So he's going to get his chance now to run for a ring now in Kansas City with the Chiefs. And it's a good thing for Kansas City. The rich get richer. Adding get another weapon to their offense.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either. It's really, he already got his money, as you mentioned, and this year's all about winning a ring. Miami's more of a long-term project. They still got Fitzmagic starting at quarterback, even though he's showing off this year so far with the arm. But that's more of a long-term contract. Once he gets into free agency, he will move on to a team like that. I am surprised, though, that he chose the Chiefs, because I think Buffalo would have been a much better fit, because Devin Singletary's their starting running back. And having a receiving back like LeVeon Bell and a veteran like LeVeon Bell would help him a lot, especially after watching him play against Tennessee this Tuesday. Now, what's surprising about the Chiefs is they already have rookie running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, And he's a very similar back, and he actually has potential to be even better than LeVeon Bell. It's going to be interesting to see how Andy Reid incorporates both of them into the offense and to see what their different roles are for the rest of the season.
And Cole, you're a huge X's and O's guy. If you're Andy Reid, how do you fit Bell into your offense?
Bell would be a perfect early down back, in my opinion, for the Kansas City Chiefs. Take a lot of pressure off of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Definitely not what you want to do per se with your guy that you want to really develop, your rookie first-round pick. But going into the second half of the season, he's been working a lot. He's been a lead back for this offense with no one else there taking the carries away from him. Now give him time to rest. In the playoffs, you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire healthy, ready to go, and LeVeon Bell, full head of steam now going in for the rest of the season. Have both those guys ready to go for playoffs. Still implement Clyde Edwards a lot in your offense, though. Both guys definitely will be utilized in the passing game. What's going to be interesting is when it comes down to the red zone, who's going to be the guy going forward on those short and goal distances. Both guys are really shifty, out of the backfield guys. See who really turns out to be the real ground and pounder there inside the goal line.
And it'll be such an interesting next couple of weeks to see how exactly he fits into that offense. But let's switch over things to head coaches, because surprisingly, a couple coaches have been fired. That's not the surprising part. The surprising part is that Adam Gase still hasn't been fired. But let's start off with the firings that have happened. Bill O'Brien fired in Houston after an 0-4 start and really wrecking this team's future, as well as Dan Quinn fired after a brutal 0-5 start in Atlanta. Matt, let's start with you. What went wrong for both of these guys?
I think these moves were inevitable, and we're going to see the same thing happen with the Jets. Sadly, it's going to be later rather than sooner, most likely, but all three of these moves were inevitable. Both the Falcons and Houston Texans have had miserable starts to the season so far, and Bill O'Brien, he traded away DeAndre Hopkins, who's leading the league in reception, in yards right now, and for David Johnson, who 4 years ago would have been a great investment. Now, after 4 years of injuries, he's 17th in the league in rushing yards with 293. It wasn't a good investment, and I think that killed him. And having an 0-4 start, that put the nail in the coffin.
Cole, what do you got?
Yeah, and then just out of Atlanta with Dan Quinn getting fired. You got Raheem Morris coming in. Look to see an interim head coach get his first win yet again. We saw it last week with Romeo Crennel over in Houston. Just a revitalized team, all in all for Houston. See if the same thing happens here in Week 6 for the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Minnesota Vikings. See if we see that same thing here with Morris now as the interim head coach. And see, being the defensive coordinator, see if he can make adjustments to the defense that is currently ranked 31st in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part of things as well. The interim head coach in Atlanta is the guy who is currently the head of one of the worst defenses in the NFL.
Well, Dan Quinn was the one calling the shots on defense, but now full control is Raheem Morris. So that's what I'm interested to see is if anything changes with that defensive unit. Offense, they're probably going to stay the same. Defense, see if anything steps up with their new head coach.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, as you said, the Texans were rejuvenated under their interim head coach this past week. And I think it's going to be even better for the Atlanta Falcons because they've played extremely well on offense so far this year. They've already blown 2 games, and that's historically a common pattern for the Atlanta Falcons in their history. So to get Dan Quinn out of there, have their defensive coordinator take over for the remainder of the season, let's see if the offense can continue on their scoring tremendous amount of points so far this season. Let's see that defense pick up and finally get them a win this season.
And it does seem like the Atlanta Falcons have turned into a Big 12 team. It's not about allowing less points than you score. It's about scoring more points than the other team. It is turning into a shootout every single week for the Atlanta Falcons. And Matt, we've touched on Adam Gase a couple of times. Is he the next to go? And how soon until the Jets pull the trigger? Because it seems like we've been waiting on this for months, years at this point. His entire tenure we've been waiting for him to get fired, and he still hasn't gotten fired yet. When is this trigger going to get pulled?
I really hope it's soon for the Jets' sake, for Sam Darnold's sake, for all of the young players, and for all of the fans of the New York Jets.
For your mental health as well?
My mental health as well, exactly. But Adam Gase is not the guy to handle the Jets offense. He was brought in to help Sam Darnold and help him develop into a star quarterback. And he is said to be an offensive specialist, but he is not ranked better than 24th in the league in offensive yards and 17th in the league in points scored in games since 2016. And that's when he had his first head coaching job with Miami, and that was the only time he ever reached the playoffs. Adam Gase is not the same guy as he was back in Denver when he was offensive coordinator. He should give up play calling, and they need to get rid of him as soon as possible if they want a chance to develop in the next 5 years.
Now, Matt, I hate to tell you this because you're a Jets fan, but in my opinion, it's not going to be sooner rather than later for firing Adam Gase. He's not going to be the next one gone. Surprisingly, and here's why. Joe Douglas is building this team to be his team of the future. The best way to do so, getting the number 1 pick and drafting Trevor Lawrence, and then moving on from Adam Gase. Therefore, this team has to lose. The best way they can lose is with Adam Gase as their head coach. They moved on from LeVeon at the beginning of the week. Now they are going to keep Adam Gase, in my opinion, till the end of the year. Keep him around, because if you fire Adam Gase, your interim head coach is going to be Greg Williams. Greg Williams' mindset his entire career, he's not going to handle losing games. He's not going to handle tanking. He's going to do everything in his power to win games. So in my opinion, the next to go is going to be Matt Patricia for the Detroit Lions. Right now, 1-4. Right now, looking like he's going to have yet another losing season for the 3rd straight year. Think back to Jim Caldwell. His last 2 years with Detroit, winning seasons, 9-7, 9-7. Now you've had back-to-back losing seasons with Matt Patricia, who's saying that he's, reviving this team, even though year after year they keep going worse and worse with Matt Patricia. Coming out of their bye, their next 5 games, Jacksonville, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Baltimore, Washington. If they lose all 5 of those games, they have yet another losing season. So if they come stumbling out of this bye, it's going to be time for Matt Patricia to call it quits with the Detroit Lions.
Well, if you're a Jets fan and just listen to what Kole said, you're going to have to basically not watch football on Sundays for the rest of the year, because I don't know how the Jets fans will handle Adam Gase being their head coach for the rest of the year. But that's all the time we got for you guys. Thanks so much for joining us for talking all things NFL football. And like Jets fans are hoping the light goes out on Adam Gase's career, the lights go out in Matt Laguzza's room. We'll be back right after this to wrap everything up. I'm Javik Blake. This is 1-on-1 Sports. So that will be our show tonight. Thanks so much for joining us throughout this entire show. And a huge thanks to our insiders, Carroll, Colby Cook, Jack Knuettel, Gray Aust, Cole Noble, and Matt Laguzza for joining us from across campus and across school communications. Big thanks as well to our director, Max Nagan, and producer, Jared Bunder, for putting this all together via Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, and some fancy software as well, making sure you get the best sports debates right to your house. I'm Javik Blake, and for all of us here at 1-on-1 Sports, make sure to follow us on all of our socials, on Twitter at 1-on-1 Sports. You can find us on Instagram as well. Feel free to ask questions and feel free to slide right into our DMs. For all of us here at 1-on-1 Sports, I'm Javik Blake saying so long. Have a great week.